Hi folks, my name is Molly Wagner. I am a 2L ambassador. So we're just gonna wait for people to filter in, but I will be giving an overview of what today's First Look Friday will look like. We are so excited to have you here and taking time out of your day to get a taste of Minnesota law. And we're really hoping that this program will give you the opportunity to get an authentic feel for what it's like to be a student. So without further ado, we will just go ahead and get started. So just a quick introduction about myself. Like I said, my name is Molly Wagner. I'm a 2L. I am the co-head admissions ambassador. And in addition to my admissions duties, I am also the co-president of Outlaw, which is the LGBTQIA affinity org. And I am a staffer on the Minnesota Law Review. I am mainly interested in tax and ERISA law, which was not at all what I thought I would be interested when I applied and even when I first came to Minnesota. So that is just to say that your legal path is sure to be a journey, and I definitely encourage being open to all opportunities. But moving on to why I chose Minnesota. So by way of background, I am originally from Southern Maryland. I went to undergrad at American University in DC. Following graduation, I worked for a year on the Yankton Sioux Reservation in South Dakota doing domestic violence work. And then I moved back to DC to enter the private sector before coming to law school. So Minnesota was not totally in my geographic range. But I'm very excited to be here. And, you know, there were a lot of reasons that really stuck out to me when I was evaluating what school to come to. First of all, I was really drawn to Minnesota for the combination of the more traditional doctrinal classes mixed with the type of experiential learning that Minnesota offered. So in your first year, you get to take a class called Law and Practice, which is a 100% simulation-based course and really gives you a great introduction to the real nuts and bolts of what lawyering is beyond being able to read statutes and read cases. And I really enjoyed that opportunity in my first year. I was also really drawn to Minnesota for the vast number of clinical opportunities and the opportunity to really apply the things you're learning in the classroom during your 2 and 3L years. So for instance, I am in the tax clinic currently, and I will be student director of the tax clinic in my 3L year. And I really enjoy that opportunity to have direct service. But I would say one of the biggest aspects that contributed to my choice of coming to Minnesota Law was truly the community and the feeling that I got when I was talking to faculty members and other current students when I was making my admissions decision. And you know, Minnesota is a very collaborative and cooperative environment. I've always felt so supported by the faculty and my classmates. You know, my classmates have been with me through all of my great triumphs and, you know, some of my missteps as well, looking at you, Torts 1L year. But I just really think that that has contributed to my experience at law school. And it's really been a defining part of Minnesota for me and what I've enjoyed about it so much. So it's really my hope that this program today, we can give you an insight into that. And so you can see that firsthand. And how we are going to achieve that. So we will shortly be breaking for a special topics panel. And today's panel will be with 3 of our fabulous professors, Professor Kloss, Professor McGovern, and Professor Matheson. And you will have the opportunity to ask any questions of them that you see. You can put them in the chat and we'll ask them directly. They'll also talk a little bit more about their experience outside of the classroom, because one of the great things about our faculty is that they are so engaged in other areas besides teaching, and has a really big impact on your relationship with your professors, because Often I will go to office hours, not just for help with classes, but to talk about a certain area of law or different types of opportunities in the legal market following law school. And that's been a huge part of what I've really enjoyed in getting to know my professors better. So after our panel event, we will move into breakout rooms. We will have 3 breakout rooms, one with each professor, and there will also be 2 current students in each breakout room. And this will be an opportunity for a little bit more relaxed discussion. You can unmute and just feel free to discuss and ask your questions about programming and class, but also if you have any questions for current students about student life, Minnesota in general, Minneapolis, you can feel free to ask those then. Each session will be 20 minutes, so you can go into one breakout room to begin with, then we'll break, come back, and you can select another breakout room to go into, so you can have the experience of talking to more than one professor. After that, we'll come back and you'll hear from the other co-head admissions ambassador, Sarani. She'll recap what we've talked about and answer any other questions that you may have before breaking for class observation, which will be, you'll be observing Civil Procedure 2 with Professor Erbsen, which is an upper level law course, which Sarani is also in. We ask that if you choose to observe the class, Sarani will give some reminders about joining that, but if you choose to join the class, please try to stay for the entire session. In following class, Sarani will host a debrief where you can ask questions about what you observed and anything that comes up from that. But otherwise, we will start moving towards our special topic panel. And I look forward to hearing all of your questions and getting to know all of you more. Like we said, we really want this to be an opportunity for you to get a better feel of Minnesota law, what it means to be a student here, and what it means to join our community. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen. Please feel free to keep your cameras on, and we look forward to talking further. Great, it is so wonderful to see all of your faces. Thank you so much for being here. I am just making sure that all of our professors are here, Professor Klaas, Professor McGovern, and Professor Matheson. Let's see.
I think it's scheduled to start at 11:45, so they might make it like right on time.
Perfect. Well, we definitely enjoy punctuality. So if anyone does, have any initial questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. I can say I'm pretty excited for Professor McGovern to, I'm pretty excited for Professor McGovern to join. I actually had my law and practice course with him. He was my professor. And just a little bit more about that course. It is so unique because it's simulation based. So we actually have actors come in to play clients, and you get to have the opportunity to do a real client introduction, interview and meeting. You do depositions, you do negotiations. We actually go down to the Hennepin County Courthouse and go to a real judge's chamber, and you have a judge's conference with an actual judge. It's over a simulated case, so it's not real facts, but you go through the entire production of having a judge's conference, and you speak with the judge with opposing counsel there, and then you break the simulation and the judge gives you feedback, which is a really great opportunity, if not a little nerve-wracking, but it's just a great way to get exposed to some of the real kind of nuts and bolts things that you'll do as an attorney in a more low stakes environment than perhaps your first 1L summer job, because you have the opportunity to, make mistakes, get feedback, and not put any real cases in jeopardy. So I really enjoyed that, and that was one of my favorite courses. It's also a great break from some of the more doctrinal classes that you'll be taking your 1L year. So I'm excited to have Professor McGovern speak a little bit more about that. But he also has a great area of scholarship that he can expand on further. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about my background or talk a little bit more about my interests. But I am glad to see that Professor McGovern has joined us. And I was just talking about how much I enjoyed being in your LIP class last year and how much I enjoyed those simulations. But as we get started here, maybe Professor McGovern, you could give a little bit of an introduction about your scholarship, the courses that you teach, but also what you're involved in outside of the school.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thanks for the introduction, Molly. My name is Bill McGovern. I'm a member of the faculty. I've been here 15 years at Minnesota Law. And I'm also serving now as the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, which is sort of a rotating position that different faculty members take on. So a lot of my time has been involved in working on our curriculum, our course schedule, and of course, these days, our response to the challenges of COVID and distance learning. And so that's been a lot of what I've been doing. But that's just one hat. I can take that one off. I also am a scholar of information law, particularly privacy, data privacy and data security law. And I do a lot of work in that area. I actually wrote a case book that is a law school casebook that's used in a few dozen law schools around the country for teaching data privacy. And I teach that course most years at the law school. I see Sarani's here, she's in that class now. I don't think I have everybody up on my screen, but so that's a really fun class, one of my favorites to teach because the issues are so dramatic. We have a system which every week different students bring in privacy in the news stories. Because it's so frequently the case that on the front page of the newspaper, there are articles about the very things we're learning in class, since the subject is so dynamic and so much on people's minds these days. I also teach some other intellectual property courses, often trademark law. I'm not doing as many of those right now because of the administrative duties I mentioned, but I'm often involved in those intellectual property courses. We have other IP professors at the school and a lot of professional adjuncts who teach our intellectual property, our patent and trademark and copyright courses. And then I have taught, as Molly mentioned, I teach sometimes, not this year, but many years, I teach in the Law in Practice program, which is our 1L skills-oriented simulation-based class that's all 1Ls take in the spring. You go through essentially an imaginary case file from week to week, watching the developments in it and doing the work yourself in mock sessions, things like client interviews, a discovery conference before a judge, a mediation, those kinds of things. And then finally, I many years teach the fall 1L civil procedure class, which is obviously the best fall 1L class. And a delightful experience for everybody who has the privilege of going to law school. And that's a really great class. I think I was a litigator in practice. And so even though it's not the area of my scholarship, I get to kind of bring some of my day-to-day litigation life into that class. And then I think the last part of your question, Molly, was what are you outside of the law school? A little bit less these days, again, because of all the work of being associate dean, but in privacy, I do quite a lot. I've been in the past a reporter, what's called a reporter for the Uniform Law Commission working on privacy. So that's a body of people nominated by every state who get together and draft model legislation that states can adopt so that they can have state by state rules that match up with what's happening in other states, and it helps with interstate commerce, of course. So I've been the reporter, which sounds like I'm just taking notes, but in fact I'm the subject matter expert who's doing the drafting and working with the committee members from all the states and trying to help them develop a law that's good and also can be passed in many state legislatures. So I worked on privacy legislation for them. I'm also on a bunch of privacy related advisory boards. So the Electronic Privacy Information Center, which is a Washington, DC advocacy group, I'm on their advisory board, and the Future of Privacy Forum, which is a more corporate oriented organization for conscientious privacy executives and companies to try and improve their practices. So there's a lot to do. It's obviously when it's that much in the news, there's always people coming and approaching me with great opportunities, and I try and get my students involved in those opportunities as much as I can. Students have always worked on my casebook as research assistants. I have a privacy practicum, which is a 1-credit class. Sarani's in this one as well, which right now, which is an opportunity to get take a certification exam in the privacy field and hear from some guest speakers who can provide a lot of guidance, career guidance, and subject matter guidance about how to map out a possible career path in the data privacy field. So I think I can stop there. That covers it, but of course we'll be having questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor. And I see that Professor Matheson has also joined us. So Professor Matheson, kind of the same question, hoping that you can talk a little bit about the courses that you teach and your involvement here at the law school, as well as your area of scholarship and the things that you're involved with outside of the law school, both academically and otherwise.
Professor Matheson, I think you are muted.
Well, you saw my smile, if not my voice, right? Happy to see you all here. I just got done with 4 back-to-back half-hour meetings with my first-year contracts, individual meetings with my contract students, either reviewing their first semester performance on the contracts exam or talking to them about job opportunities for the summer as we're moving forward here in a little different world and have to navigate it a little bit differently. But I teach first-year contracts. I also teach generally in the business law area. So I teach the second-year Business Association Corporations course, which is sort of the introductory course to business organization law. I teach an advanced corporate law course. I teach sometimes a comparative corporate governance course. And then I'm the director of what we call our corporate institute here at the law school. And under the guise of that corporate institute, we've developed a number of student-oriented programs. I'll give you a couple examples of those. One is what we call a corporate externships. It's great to be in the Twin Cities and in a major metropolitan area like this, because we have lots of businesses of all sizes, as well as obviously the state and federal government and nonprofit opportunities. But as far as on the private side or nonprofit business side, we have lots of opportunities for our students to, during their time that they're students, spend part of their semester in-house with a company or a nonprofit, seeing how the law is practiced with that business or that nonprofit organization. And that's what I call our corporate externships. Some students do judicial externships where they go and work with a judge for a semester as part of their other classes. This is a business-oriented or nonprofit-oriented externship where they do work in a legal department and have some opportunity to see what really happens inside those organizations. Another program that we have here at the law school under the auspices of the Corporate Institute is a business law clinic. That is, we have many wonderful clinics at the law school, but the business law clinic is relatively unique in the sense that it's transactionally focused. What we do is help startup businesses get going. So the students working under the guidance of a lawyer helps a startup business get formed, do some basic documentation, maybe enter into a lease contract, But our students are actually working on live client matters in that business law clinic. Most of our clients in that business law clinic come on referrals from various consulting organizations here in the Twin Cities. Many of them are minority-owned businesses where we are providing that legal advice for those businesses. All of it is free legal advice. That it's excellent legal advice, even though it's free, but that's part of the clinic. And students get an opportunity to actually see how representing businesses in a smaller manner in the startup business work. So that's while I love advising students in all areas, and two of my calls this morning had nothing to do with business law. There were students interested in doing public interest work. I'm happy to visit with you, but particularly my areas are in the business law sector. I'm also, I don't serve on the boards of any businesses except one. I serve on the board of a nonprofit organization called Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, which is a Minnesota organization. And it's not just about lawyers, it's about law students, it's about judges, and it's about their families, providing accessible guidance and advice and treatment when necessary for students, judges, lawyers, and their families when they're under stress and in need of help. So I sit on that nonprofit board, Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor Matheson. I also see that Professor Klaas has joined us. Professor, if you could just give a little bit of an overview about the courses that you teach at the law school and your particular area of scholarship, and then also talk a little bit more about the things that you're involved with outside of the school, just by way of introduction. And I want to remind all of our admitted students that you can feel free to put questions for any of these professors in the chat. After we finish the last of the introductions, I'll start posing your questions to professors and they will speak on them. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'm Alex Klaas, and I'm the chair of our environmental and energy law concentration, which I'll talk about in a bit. But in terms of what I teach first year torts. So I see students on essentially their first real day of law school and that first semester. And so very likely if you come to University of Minnesota, I'll have some of you in my torts class. I really enjoy teaching first year torts. And then I also teach energy law, which is one of the required courses for the environmental and energy law concentration, but a lot of students who don't do the concentration also take energy law. It's really a growing field. And then I teach public lands and natural resources law. And that deals with the laws and regulations governing national parks, national monuments, federal public lands, we do a lot of the history of the West and Western public lands, endangered species, water rights, those sorts of things. I'm teaching that class right now, and it's really a fun class because students get to talk a lot about the national parks they visited and hiking and snowmobiling and all of the activities that we do on federal public lands. And of course, our federal lands and national monuments and national parks are very much in the news these days. It's always a fun class to teach when we have a new presidential administration, because there's just lots of changes and lots of new nominees, whether we're going from Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican. So I've also in the past, I've taught first year property before, but I haven't done that in a while. I've taught environmental law before. And as I said, I'm the chair of our environmental and energy law concentration. And so that means I advise the students who are pursuing that concentration, and probably other folks have talked to you about the variety of concentrations that we have here at the law school. So I do that, and trying to think what else. A little bit more about my background. I was in private practice for 10 years before joining the University of Minnesota. So I was a partner at the Dorsey and Whitney law firm, which is one of the bigger law firms in Minneapolis. And there I did environmental litigation, land use litigation, environmental regulatory work. And so I really do try to bring a lot of those experiences into the classroom, whether it's torts, whether it's energy law, whether it's the public lands class. And I end up advising students a lot about various careers in environmental and energy law specifically, and also just legal practice more generally, whether it's government work or private sector work. And, you know, it's really nice having practiced in the Twin Cities and then being in the law school now, because I'm still very connected with the legal community. I've sat on the governing council of the State Bar Environmental, Natural Resources and Energy Law section. I currently am on the governing council of the Public Utilities section. And so I can end up being a nice link for students who are interested in those areas with the practice community. So I do that. I also serve on the board of the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. I'm right now the vice president of the board, and next year I'll take over as president of the board. And I've chaired their legal committee for quite a few years right now. And if you're not familiar with them, they're just a top-notch environmental advocacy group based in St. Paul. They also run our environmental and energy law clinic, which is great. So we always have students working on real cases with MCEA as part of that clinic experience. And they also have summer externs from the U. We have a really nice connection with not just MCEA, but with the state agencies as well. I always have students who are working over at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, either, you know, usually for credit, sometimes at the Department of Natural Resources, at the Public Utilities Commission. And then I also work with a lot of students who are interested at working at the Department of Justice and their Environmental and Natural Resources Division, or EPA. And then we have a lot of graduates who end up working in the environmental and energy area in California, Seattle, Alaska, Chicago, lots in DC, and then here in the Twin Cities. So we really try to have an integrated program where, you know, students are learning what they need to learn in the classroom, but also are connected with the broader legal community in the Twin Cities, and then also nationally and internationally as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor. And thank you all for taking the time to be on this panel and answer questions from our admitted students and talk a little bit more about the U. We are getting some questions in the chat that I'd like to pose to you all. So the first one I think is very relatable in terms of how do you advise or speak to students who may not be completely sure what area of interest they are pursuing? And what advice would you give them in terms of class choice or whether or not to pursue a concentration?
I can give you my answer on that. I love it when students have no idea what area of law they might want to go into. And students are always so worried about that. You know, they might be, you know, brand new first year law students, like, I don't know what kind of law I want to practice. I'm like, even if you thought you knew, you would probably change your mind. So luckily we do a lot of the work for you your first year by choosing all of your classes for you. So you don't have very many decisions. And that may seem like a bad thing, but then once you have to like choose your second semester, first year elective, and everyone gets all nervous about that, even though they don't need to, then you appreciate the fact that we've done everything for you in the first semester. I mean, think about every course that you take as an opportunity to think about what you might like to do and what you might not like to do. And then, you know, I talked about our externship opportunities. You're going to have summer job opportunities, and sometimes getting experience in something that you've now decided, you know, you don't want to practice that area of law. That's just as valuable as finding something that you like, because you can, you know, check some things off the list. So your first year is kind of set for you. During that first year, you're going to have so many experiences and learn so much inside the classroom, outside the classroom, with speakers that we have come in. Your second semester, you will get a choice of courses, but you know, every course you can take later on. And by the spring of your first year, when you actually do get to choose your classes for second and third year, you're going to have a much better sense of either the professors that you like, that you want to take another class with. You're going to have learned from all of your classmates about different areas of law that you never heard of. And you can go to all your professors for advice. I advise students, lots of students who are not in the environmental and energy law concentration, but they're my tort students. And so I sort of help work with them. And I'll just say myself, When I started law school, not only did I have no idea what area of law I wanted to go into, I didn't even know any lawyers. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. No one in my family had, lawyer friends. So I knew nothing going in. And so do not feel like you're at some disadvantage because you haven't, made any of those decisions. We're here to help you with that.
Can I just jump in and say a little bit more? I agree with everything Professor Klass said, +1 for all of that. Just about two other things sort of on a school-wide level. So several of the questions are about concentrations. And I think it's really important to say, unlike undergraduate majors, concentrations can be an important part of your law school career choices and your course choices, but they're optional entirely. So about half of our students don't do any concentrations. They just take a wide array of general interest topics, and that works really, really well. When I first started teaching at Minnesota Law 15 years ago, we didn't have concentrations at all yet. So they're a relatively recent innovation. For students who really get excited about an area like environment and energy or intellectual property or business and corporate law, it can be a great opportunity to really focus and specialize and be on a particular track, but it is optional. And even those who do concentrations, it takes up, most of them, about 1/4 of your course time in the second and third years. So basically one of the 4 semesters, the equivalent of it, is in your concentration, and all the rest of it is general things across the whole curriculum. And so it's a JD is a degree that's meant to equip you to do all the different things that lawyers do. And then the concentration is the opportunity to really focus in for people who discover something that's great for them and want to specialize. So that's important to say. And then the other thing is, in addition to the informal advising that all the 1L professors do, I know that Professor Matheson and Klass and I are all fall 1L professors and end up talking to many of our students about all kinds of things about law school careers, choices. But we also, all 1Ls are assigned to a particular professor at the school who's an advisor and who has some kind of meetings at regular intervals with you, or at least email conversation if that works better, to make sure that you have one touch point for sure that you can rely on. And then as you get to know more professors of your own, you add to your kind of set of professors who are people you can go to for advice and for information.
I'll follow up, but then go to another question as well, since there are a number of them in the chat. I can tell you that law firms and organizations love students who work hard and are flexible. I get told by New York law firms all the time, we love your students. They work hard and don't whine. That is, if they get thrown a roadblock or get told, they're needed and help in another area, they say, all right, tell me what to do. Just the opposite of thinking you have to nail down some area of the law right away. It's important to be able to be flexible, and as Alex said, learn about different areas of the law. One of the students I was talking to this morning said, I came in saying, I'm absolutely going to do public interest work. I took your class. I think transactional is a wonderful area. How do I learn more about working in a transactional law area and helping people get things done? And then I'll follow up. There was a question, what if we're online in the fall? I'm not suggesting that we will be. I certainly hope not. What will happen to clinics and career services is one of the questions. Well, I run a business law clinic. We didn't miss a step. All our students are doing the same things they would be doing. We just can't do it in person as opposed to online. I mean, we have our Zoom meetings with the clients and help them get their businesses going and send documents back and forth. And while there's nothing better than being in the room and being able to visit with the client and talking with them and having give and take, this is a very good second best, as you're all using it right now. And we didn't miss a beat. No student missed out on an opportunity, at least as far as I know, because we've been going online. Certainly the opportunity to be shoulder to shoulder with your classmates and be in the room with the professor. But other than that, we've kept everything going. Bill would know that better, but we've kept forward with all the programs that we have, and we'll continue to do that in the fall.
Great,
I was going to add just two more things on that. the first job that you have after law school, you might be doing one area of law, and you may change that radically 3 different times at least in your law practice. Lots of lawyers start out doing one thing, and then they have a client where they get expertise in something else. And then all of a sudden they have expertise in that area. And then now that's their area of specialty. So, I mean, I know so many lawyers who have really changed, you know, what they've done as a result of circumstances and experiences. So, and, you know, frankly, a lot of people practice in areas where they never took a law school class, either because it didn't exist or that wasn't something that they were focused on at the time. So, I mean, you know, Professor Matheson is absolutely right that, I mean, we teach you to be well-rounded lawyers, and that it includes the skills to pivot to different substantive areas. The other thing is, you know, during the pandemic, I mean, I think we've done a really good job of remote learning, but also in-person learning. I ended up teaching all my classes in person with a Zoom component for a few students that needed to be permanently remote. But actually my public lands and natural resources law class, we've been all in person for most of our class sessions, like all in terms of all the students being there. So we even got to turn off Zoom, which the students were thrilled about. So we have had a decent percentage of in-person classes at the law school. And I would anticipate that if we are not all fully back to in-person, we will at least have those opportunities as well. My torts class was in person too.
Great, thank you for that insight. I wanted to go a little bit to Julia's question, which touches on research assistants. And I was hoping that maybe you could talk a little bit about just your overall academic scholarship that you work on in addition to being professors, and the opportunities that students have to be involved in that, or if they are very interested in the scholarship that you're doing, how they can involve that in their own coursework.
I can go first. I use research assistants quite heavily in my work, and you know, most of them find it a great experience. Usually February, I will, you know, post positions for the summer, and I really focus on 1L students. So this would be sort of summer after 1L year, and I have students apply. Usually I'll hire 2 research assistants for the summer. Last year we had some additional kind of pandemic related funding, just because, you know, a lot of people's sort of summer experiences either got canceled or modified. So we had an opportunity to hire more research assistants. And I had a big project I was working on involving clean energy transition and rural electric cooperatives. I was working on this with a professor over at the Humphrey School who I do some work with. And so I ended up hiring 4 1L students as research assistants. And they helped us, they did, you know, great research. A lot of their work was incorporated into the article, which is being published. And so oftentimes, sometimes those are part-time because the students are maybe doing a judicial externship or some other kind of part-time work. And sometimes it's full-time, it's very flexible. And then usually I'll keep on some of my research assistants during the school year on a part-time basis, because of course, once they become second and third years, they're much more valuable to me because they know something and they've taken energy law, or they've taken administrative law. And so the last couple of years, I've actually co-authored journal articles with students. And so that's a great, you know, publication experience. I've got one that is out to journals right now for review. That's with one of my second year students. And then with one of my third year research assistants, we have an article that's coming out in the California Law Review this year. So I work very heavily with students as research assistants, and that's pretty, I mean, all professors use research assistants a little bit differently, but we all work with students as RAs, and they're, you know, really great research, writing opportunities, and you get paid too, which is nice.
Molly, you want to do another question?
Sure. So, and we have about 5 more minutes before we will be going into the breakout rooms. And just a reminder, we'll have 2 20-minute sessions. So you can change breakout rooms and have a different professor. And this is an opportunity for just to keep the conversation going in a little bit more relaxed and smaller groups. So you can feel free to unmute and ask questions. But in terms of another question from the chat, there was a question about opportunities for students to work outside of Minneapolis for summer employment. And I know that in my experience, yes, absolutely. But I was hoping that maybe professors, you could talk a little bit about opportunities and connections that you've helped your students with when advising them for career paths outside of the Twin Cities.
Well, I can take that first. I love helping students go where they want to go. We you know, a large majority of our students actually come from outside of Minnesota. Our first year class is, I think, 70% approximately outside, but in any event, it's a majority from outside the Minnesota. And some students want to go back there. Lots of students want to stay here. The fact is, you know, for myself, I've been teaching here 37 years. I have 37 years of students all over the country and the world. They generally are, they know the quality of your degree, the pedigree you have, so to speak. You know, one of the things I say to a student when they come to me and say, hey, I'd really like to practice in San Francisco. I'll give you an example. I had a 1L student a year ago who came to me and said, I want to get to Silicon Valley. Okay. And I said, okay, well, let's do that. All right. But one of our first steps in doing that is let's identify our graduates who are already there. And I can contact them, and you can contact them and say, you know, I can contact them on your behalf and be a reference for you. And you can contact them as the initial contact and say, hey, I want to be where you are. How do I do that? You know, and the fact is we have, you know, as you'll see from our website, you know, those resources, those prior students are more than happy to help. And all we have to do is reach out and ask them, as you will, by the way, as graduates. You know, you'll love the opportunity to give back and pay forward by helping those students. So I'm excited when a student wants to go somewhere else or try something else. And you know, our job as faculty, in my mind, as well as the Career Services Center, is to help you get there. And we do our best.
Yes, I mean, lots of our students spend the summer outside the Twin Cities, and then go on to permanent jobs there. So I'm just thinking of sort of, you know, more recent graduates that I've had summer experiences that they've had have been, you know, at the Department of Energy in DC, the Justice Department in DC, the Sierra Club in San Francisco. I always have a student who goes to Earth Justice in Alaska. I have a student working now at Earth Justice in Chicago who had done a summer opportunity there. Students working at law firms in the DC area and Chicago. Again, these are just kind of the environmental and energy students that I end up spending, you know, a lot of time advising. Student who worked for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for a couple of years and now just got a job in the honors program in the Environmental Natural Resources Division in DC. Another student who's in the legal counsel's office at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, so also in DC. So, you know, both coasts, everywhere in between.
Yep, I don't have too much to add. I will just sort of underscore, and I see that Kate put it in the chat as well, right? The Career Center, I mean, your professors have all these connections. In addition, the Career Center hosts lots of recruiting from employers who are not in the Twin Cities area. So there's, in fact, I just was in a meeting with the director of the Career Center, Claudia Melo, and they've just been having interview programs virtually, of course, these days, but in previous years, there were fly-in programs in DC, New York, Houston, California. And that's just in the last couple of weeks.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that perspective, professors. We really appreciate it. So we are going to be transitioning to the next part of our agenda, which, as I mentioned, is breakout rooms. So in a few moments here on your screen, you'll have the option to choose which breakout room you would like to join. And the title of the breakout room has the professor who will be in it. And as I mentioned, there will also be 2 current students in those breakout rooms. So you can feel free to unmute and ask questions about classes, about advising, but also about student life or moving to Minneapolis, whatever crosses your mind, we're here to help. And then we'll reconvene at 1 o'clock to carry forward.